All right, welcome back. Now we're going to talk about format. The format. Anytime I put the format up, it always makes me think of the actual format, like the band, and then format songs get stuck in my head. And none of you know who the format are because you're too young. But fascinating fact, the lead singer of the format for the 10 years that they were an indie hipster band is now the lead singer of Fun. Remember Fun with a period? Anyhow, all right, let's move on. So here's the headings, or the parts of the parts of a memo. Always the same, right? To, from, date, and subject, followed by body, enclosures, and the initials of the typist. If I see initials of the typist, I assume that you hired somebody to type your memo and you will fail. So don't actually include initials of the typist. So let's walk through this. Notice first, and this is very important, that the to, the from, the date, and the subject are all capitalized. They're also bolded. You can't tell here. And then you put readers' names and job titles, your name and job title, especially if you're writing to something or somebody outside of your department, still within the business, but outside of your, if there's any chance that somebody doesn't know you, you need to include your title so that they understand maybe a little better why they're receiving this memo. The complete and current date, so you would say, September 11th, 2014. And then the subject. And your subject line is what the memo is about, highlighted in some way. So you could think of it as, akin to a headline in a newspaper. Like it's going to tell them why they're reading this. What is it about? Again, body and enclosures. And we're going to go through these one by one. So two, if your memo is going to more than one person, be sure to list them in order of status. So if you're sending it to the members of a board of directors, the chairperson goes first, followed by the vice chairperson, and then so on down the line. You would not, if there's some kind of hierarchy like that, you would not want to put them in alphabetical order or random order. And again, these can be people. They can also be a group. As I mentioned before, you could send a memo to all graduate students in the College of Ag and Life Sciences, and you would just write that exactly, and that would be okay. The from field, remember it's your name and title when appropriate. Date, give the full calendar date. And then as a matter of formatting, notice that the subject line is actually the only thing that's all caps on the right-hand side of the screen there. This serves as the title line of your memo, so you'll see it in an example in a moment where that's all in caps. Okay, anyhow. Here's the sample. So two double space down, so there's one blank line here, double space down, one blank line here, so on and so forth. How to create a memorandum in all caps, and then your body of your thing. This would be the typist initials. Again, if you have typist initials, I will fail you because none of you should have secretaries. And then enclosures. Now, here's a fascinating thing about enclosures that a lot of people struggle with. You only write enclosures if you actually are enclosing something. That seems self-evident, but it's not. And so the purpose of this is just that, if you're writing a memo about how to get someplace and you reference in your memo that you're including a map, you would put enclosures in here. And that way, if a person gets the memo and there's no map with it and it says enclosures, they will know that there was supposed to have been something in there and that they need to go and check and get that map or whatever it is. So you can see how it would be very frustrating if you didn't actually enclose anything and you put enclosures there. They would be like, what am I missing? I don't know. Anyhow, also always a good idea, even if it's not like this in your sample handout that I give you, it's always good to put memo at the top, just so there's no ambiguity about what's going on here. You would not put memos because this is only one. I don't know why that says memos. 2 inches down from the top says your margins 1 inch to the side. More particular about the top one than the inches from the side. All right, let's move on. How to organize your memo. And by this, I mean the actual content of your memo. So it comes into mainly two parts, the intro and everything else. So sometimes your memo will be like one large paragraph of text. I think for the assignment I required two, but some memos, that you'll write in life will be, so short and to the point you can cover the whole thing in one paragraph. But for the sake of our assignment, we're going to do two. So in the opening, our introduction, you need to tell why you're writing, like what is the purpose of the memo. By the first or second sentence, if your reader can't tell you why they're reading this memo, you failed. You don't want them to make it to the end of the memo and then at the end figure out why they were reading it, because then they have to go back and read it again because there's no context. So tell them why you're writing right up front. If it's a problem, explain the context of the problem. If you're asking them to do something, tell them why you're writing and then what the specific assignment or task is that you want them to complete. And then, add like some extra there to clarify why the reader should read this document, like why it's of benefit to them. And so if it's a school principal writing to let all parents of such and such middle school know about the new dress code. You'll say that, I'm writing to inform you about the new dress code. We've had some issues with dress code with, the children, and we like to think that by implementing this new dress code, gang violence will go down or something to that effect. And then the next paragraph, which is what we're getting into now, is the body segment, contains further information. So you might talk further about like the details of the dress code, like, the pants are going to be like khaki and everybody's going to wear polos, absolutely no gang memorabilia, whatever the case is. This is where you go into details. You may go into further detail about the problems that you've had. Again, the first paragraph set up the context and then why they were writing, and then everything else from that point just gives added detail. And so again, I'm looking for, I think, well, we'll look at the assignment in a moment. Most memos are going to be somewhere in the realm of 1 to 4 paragraphs. So it contains extra information you want to convey, including any background that you need to on the topic. And so include only the information needed by the reader. Don't ramble with insignificant items. Memos are meant to be short and to the point. They're not meant to like beat around the bush or have sort of like flattery or any kind of like sort of weird like clearing of your throat in terms of like writing and oh, it's so good, it's a great day up at the Glenview Middle School, and we've had it's a great year, and also we've had gang violence, and we need to change the. No, you just write, we're writing to inform you about a new change in the dress code, blah 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 blah. Hopefully you see where I went with that. All right, the closing segment only applies if your memo is longer than 2 to 3 paragraphs. So for most of you, this won't be the case unless you just get carried away with your memo. But so if your memo is short, if it's only 1 paragraph, you obviously don't need to recap things. If it does get kind of long, you do want to recap with any main points and then restate any action specifically you want the reader to take if they need to take any kind of action. Sometimes you're just informing them of stuff and you just want to summarize the main points. And again, be sure to stress how the reader will benefit, because if you want to elicit some kind of reaction, people will always react better if they think they're going to get something out of it. It's just a fact of life. And then list enclosures or attachments. Neither one is correct or wrong, unless you don't say that there's attachments and then there are attachments. So, all right, well, that's that. Let's go over some other stuff here while I got you. This is your reading for the week. We're actually going to refer back to this reading several times throughout this unit. It's by a guy that used to be my professor back at UF named Ricky Tailg. And it just covers a number of different business communication that you can do. So business writing in general, business writing in general, like with the hook, know your reader, know your purpose, all these kinds of things that should be becoming pretty repetitive. You should start to see a pattern. How to write clearly, Then we get into components of the business letter, and then types of business letters that you can have: good newsletter, bad newsletter. Whenever it comes time for you all to do your business letter assignment, you'll get to pick one of these. You could write a thank you letter, a request letter, so on and so forth. All right, let's see here. This is the memo writing assignment. It's under the assignment on Scholar, but it's also right here. And so you're only doing one of these. I'd like to stress that. Every year I get some, overzealous kid that does like all three of them. But you need to make a memo format, pull the appropriate information out of one of these three scenarios, and then make yourself a memo, and then you can make up the rest. So for example, this one's pretty straightforward. You work for Pfizer Animal Health as a PR director. This is your title, hint, hint. Write a memo to all your employees at the company telling them about an upcoming picnic. Here's the date of the picnic, and then you get to decide what activities we're going to have. So be creative, and then you were looking for 2 full paragraphs. And then there's 2 other scenarios here too. I'm going to tell you this is a pet peeve of mine, and I'm going to tell you right now as a cool bonus hint for those of you who have listened to this whole video. Whenever you give directions, you need to give directions in a professional manner. So you would just list the address of this Pocono Park, whatever you decide it to be, just list it. What you would not do is say, well, you run down to the end of Old Glades Road and hang a left by the decaying tree and then take a right before you hit the dead end, that kind of thing. That's not how you give directions in a professional way. So just give them the address and they can Google it. All right, let's see what else we got. This is a handout that you're going to get to help you. We just talk about different memo types, the different parts of the memo, and then here's an example. And so again, you can see to, from, date, subject, all capitalized, all bolded. The subject line is all bold. Enclosures, if there is enclosure. One thing that they're missing on this is that it should say memo across the top. Most people can recognize this as the memo format, but let's go ahead and remove all doubt and just write memo. Great, super, fantastic. You're a great audience. Thank you. I think that's it. All right, next up we'll talk about business letters. So get excited. All right, peace out, children.